Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Department of Florida finals of the American Legion's National Oratorical Contest. I will ask that Legionnaires uncover, and everyone please rise as our Department Chaplain Steve Newman gives the invocation.
Let us pray. We come into your holy presence once again, our God, thanking you for your love, your mercy, thanking you for your promise that you will be with us if we truly seek you. We pray your divine blessing and guidance upon us now as we come to serve our fellow men, our country, and thee, our God, to the American Legion. Dear Father, we ask you to bless those gathered here today at this oratorical challenge. Give all the candidates your special blessing as they compete in this very special event. May our objectives and activities follow your will. May the time and talents be offered freely in guiding, encouraging, and leading these candidates as they compete today. We pray and thank you, each in our own way, as we ask all of this in your name. Amen.
Amen. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Jay Conti.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Be seated. At this time, I'd like to ask the Department Adjutant, Mike McDaniel, to come to the podium, please, for presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chipper looking group this morning. All except for these guys over here. Well, today is going to be a special contest. Today we are going to bring these young ladies and young men from all over the state of Florida for the state competition. You are definitely going to be wowed because when you see what these young men and women bring to the table at this young age that they are, it is certainly impressive. The American Legion has conducted this contest for how many years now? 1938. But yet people don't know who the American Legion is. The American Legion has also conducted a boys' state program, a girls' state program that teaches kids about democracy, that teaches the young men and women that how to write a law, how to take a law and make it a bill and make it a bill into the law, and how to go ahead and work with their fellow students to go ahead and create change in our environment that makes a better world for all of us. American Legion's been doing this for many, many years, but people don't know who we are. So I, as the adjutant of the American Legion, ask one simple task from each and every one of you today. When you leave here and you go back to your homes, try to tell 10 people about what you've seen here today. Because if those 10 people tell 5 people, then we're on the start for a good direction. Can you do that for us? Yeah. All right, thank you so much. I'm going to introduce you the commander of the American Legion. His name is Art Schwabe, and his beautiful wife, Erna. Commander, you didn't have to stand. Art Schwabe is our commander. He's been our commander since June. He's traveled all over the great state of Florida, working with Legionnaires, supporting our programs, doing a lot of great things. It is an absolute honor for me to work for him, with him, and be a part of this great organization with members like him and other members that are coming up in the future. So with this, I'd like to go introduce the commander of the American Legion, state of Florida, Art Schwabe. The only thing that myself and this man do not get along about is he wants me to jump out of a perfectly good plane, which I do not want to do, but I understand he's already made a date for us to do it, so soon.
Good morning. Good morning. I would just, first of all, like to introduce my wife, who is also the second vice president for the auxiliary. Next year will be the president of the auxiliary, so we're going to take one more. And I'd also like to introduce Dennis Boland, our National Executive Committee member. Dennis. I would like to thank all of you for being here today. Some of you had to get up early in the morning, some of you came in the night before because of the distance you had to travel. going to be a great competition. Should be interesting, should be fun. And I want to thank you as well as the judges for being part of this, because you just being here makes a difference for everybody. So with that, Ron, it's all yours.
This morning you will be hearing 6 contestants, each having advanced from their respective area competitions. You will notice that the contestants are not on stage at this time. Throughout the competition, they will appear on stage only to deliver their orations. In all fairness to the speakers, I would ask that you do not applaud until the contest has been completed. I would ask that you refrain from taking pictures or do not leave your chair while a contestant is speaking. If you have a beeper or cell phone, please turn it off now. Our speakers will be introduced by number only. Each speaker is about to deliver an 8 to 10 minute prepared oration regarding the U.S. Constitution, specifically the attendant duties of the citizens of the government. The contestants are not allowed to use notes, a podium, or a sound system, and prompting is not permitted. The contestants will be shown a time card at the 8th, 9th, and 10th minute mark of their prepared oration. If there is a violation of the time requirement, a penalty of 1 point for each minute or fraction thereof shall be assessed against the contestant's total score. There will be a short pause between contestants to allow the judges time to mark the scorecards. Before introducing the last speaker, I will ask Dennis Boland to draw an assigned topic from the 4 provided. All contestants will then speak on the same subject no less than 3 minutes or more than 5 minutes. When the last contestant has spoken on his or her prepared oration, contestant number 1 will be taken to a private room and given the topic card and allowed 5 minutes to prepare for their assigned topic. I will read the assigned topic to you before contestant number 1 is introduced. If everyone is ready, I will call for contestant number 1. Contestant number 1, the title of her oration, The Powerful Constitution.
As I prepared my speech, I asked my little sister Carolina what she knew about the Constitution. She told me that through her 7th grade civics class, she learned that the Constitution was created at the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. And it was written by James Madison, the father of our Constitution. As she continued to retrieve facts from her memory, I was so proud of her. My little sister, who bears a learning disability, is knowledgeable on our nation's most important document. My curiosity grew, and I asked my parents what they knew about the Constitution. They told me that the Constitution outlines the 3 main branches of government and their separation of powers. In Article 1, the legislative branch is outlined, which consists of Congress, 438 representatives, and 100 senators. In Article 2, the executive branch is outlined, which consists of the president and their duties and responsibilities. In Article 3, the judicial branch is outlined, which consists of the Supreme Court and the federal courts. It is also the shortest written portion of the 3 main branches. My mother, being from Mexico, and my father, being from Colombia, told me that in their countries, the American Constitution is deeply studied and well respected. My family of immigrants was able to tell me more about the Constitution and show it more love and appreciation than those in my AP government class when I asked them the same question, what do you know about the Constitution? Written in 1787, ratified in 1788, and in operation since 1789, the United States Constitution is the world's longest surviving written charter of government. Its first 3 words, we the people, affirm that the United States exists exists to serve its citizens. For over 200 years, the United States Constitution has stood firm because its framers separated and balanced governing principles in order to safeguard issues such as majority rule and minority rights, liberty and equality, and the federal and state governments. The United States Constitution has evolved through amendments in order to meet the needs of a nation now profoundly different from the 18th century world in which the creators lived. This vital and living document has been strengthened through amendments, serving as both guide and protector to the American people and their elected officials. The United States Constitution has survived civil war, economic depressions, assassinations, and terrorist attacks in order to remain a source of wisdom and inspiration for all of us. The creation of the Constitution depended upon the knowledge, experience, and dedication of its framers, just as its endurance depends upon the knowledge and experience of each succeeding generation of Americans. For this reason, it is important for us to learn and understand governing principles set forth by the Constitution. This vital and living document is referred to as a living and breathing Constitution because it is open to constant change by ratification of a new amendment or repealing of an existing amendment. Consequently, as time goes on and new issues and concerns arise, the United States Constitution can be changed in order to meet the needs of the present and the future. Additionally, the United States Constitution is constantly interpreted by the Supreme Court. Hence, abortion and automatic weapons were not issues during the inception of the Constitution over 200 years ago. But through constant interpretation by the Supreme Court, protections or restrictions can be given on a variety of issues. Our government has understood the importance in educating its citizens on our Constitution. According to the United States Senate, Congress established Constitution Week in 1956 in order to encourage all Americans to learn more about the Constitution. It was set forth to begin each year on September 17th, a date in which in 1789 the delegates to the convention signed the Constitution. In 2004, Senator Robert C. Byrd of West Virginia included key provisions in the Consolidated Appropriations Act of fiscal year 2005, designating September 17th of each year as Constitution Day, requiring public schools and governmental offices to provide educational programs in order to promote a better understanding of our Constitution. Now, let's put it into perspective. Great Britain's Constitution is not codified on one document, but it is embodied in many documents, such as treaties, court judgments, and statutes. While the American Constitution is very difficult to change, Great Britain's Constitution can be changed by only a simple majority. Now, there has been a large number of constitutional reforms in Great Britain in recent times, many of which have occurred on a piecemeal basis and without any formal public debate on the long-term implications of such changes or considerations of other elements of the Constitution. While we would never think of complete constitutional reform in Great Britain, constitutional reform is high on the political agenda, and it is promised by each of the manifestos of the three main political parties. Because of our American Constitution, we do not live under the rule of a king or queen. Our American Constitution protects us in whatever we have to do. It currently protects our right to assemble and my right to speak. Now, it is in our culture not to talk about politics or our own ideologies. We avoid arguments and insults by steering clear of politics. However, it is important that we as grandparents, parents, mentors, and Americans educate others in our government and in our Constitution. In a world where television is the main source of information, we cannot rely this sole responsibility on television shows, educational programs, or teachers. Help me start a national conversation. Tell your children, educate your grandchildren. Tell all Americans, young and old, about this amazing document. Not just on September 17th, Constitution Day, but every day. America, what do you know about the Constitution? Now, it seems as though we forget to take pride in our Constitution, a document that has led our nation, and only consists of 4,400 words. It is the oldest and longest written constitution of any major government in the world, and it only took 100 days to frame. Take pride in the fact that of the 55 delegates to the convention, only 50 were Revolutionary War veterans. Take pride in the fact that our Constitution has led our nation into becoming a world power in science, military, and finance. Take pride in what makes you American. Our soldiers, our success, our Constitution. Thank you.
Now for contestant number 1, 8 minutes, 58 seconds, no penalty. The title of contestant number 2's oration is Education and Our Constitution.
A man walked through the streets of sunny California with a clipboard in one hand and a pen in the other. Attached to the clipboard was a petition that sought to repeal the First Amendment from the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. The man carrying this petition was Mark Dice, and he did so to prove a point to the American public. Nearly every single person Mr. Dice walked up to, quite willingly, signed the petition. One man even read the entire petition line by line, from the bold headline declaring, "Repeal the First Amendment," to the very last signature. And he still signed it. Only one young lady chose not to sign the petition. Her reason? So she could do a little research to find out what this First Amendment thing was. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to assemble and petition the government. These are the rights guaranteed in the First Amendment. Yet there is a serious problem in our society today, where citizens don't even know their basic rights and willingly give them away with a stroke of a pen. It is our responsibility as citizens to keep freedom alive and thriving here in America. It is a duty we owe to our nation, yet most have forgotten our founding document, the Constitution. From our beginning, the founders designed the American system of representative government to rest on the shoulders of the people. Citizens were to take an interest in political affairs. They were to remain aware of governmental policies and decisions. They were to actively ensure that their interests were protected. As a way to keep the people informed, during the debates over the Constitution, works such as the Federalist Papers and Joseph Story's Commentaries on the Constitution were published, with detailed explanations of every aspect of this new document. To these citizens, staying informed was a crucial part too long, King George had censored the voice of the people. For too long, citizens had been unable to rally in defense of their own rights and their own lives. Now that Americans had their own government, they eagerly exercised those rights that had been so long denied to them. Unfortunately, today, we as citizens have neglected to stay involved. We have neglected our responsibilities, and our country has suffered as a result. Government oversight by citizens is now more important than ever before. Each administration has promised to be more open, more transparent, and more accountable than the last. They promise to listen to the concerns of the people and respect their collective will. Yet, this openness, this transparency, and this accountability have failed to materialize time after time. Our government today passes incomprehensible bills, authorizes secretive actions against its own citizens, and obfuscates the truth. All we have to do is simply mention Operation Fast and Furious, the Affordable Care Act, Benghazi, and the NSA to understand why citizens' awareness and participation are vital. Our representatives have failed us and betrayed our trust. But while we are quick to jump on politicians and blame them for this gross misuse of our trust, and rightly so, there is another, potentially bigger problem. We have betrayed ourselves. It is the people's duty to hold government accountable for their actions, and it is our responsibility to be a strong and vocal part of the process of government, and to let our representatives know where we stand and what we want as a country. We have not done that. We have failed our responsibilities. As George Nicholas declared in defense of the Constitution in 1788, an enlightened people will never suffer what was established for their security to be perverted to an act of tyranny. We must be an educated citizenry, willing to limit the actions of Congress and return to a nation of the people, by the people, and for the people. When we learn about the true intent of our founders, when we study the Constitution, when we go back to our foundation and the roots of what made America great, then we will be on the right track for reclaiming our government. We must be an enlightened people, but we're not. Instead, we have a nation full of people who do not understand how extraordinary America's form of government is. Our government is a genius combination of a monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy. The one, the few, and the many. The president, the legislatures, and the people. It is an exceptional system that protects rights and freedoms for over 300 million citizens here in the United States. Those who live elsewhere can only dream of having the privileges we take for granted. Unfortunately, recent surveys show that only 25% of Americans can name more than one of the rights guaranteed in the First Amendment. The percentage of Americans who can name all three branches of government? Only 38%. And 1/3 of those surveyed could not correctly identify any of the three legislative, executive, and judicial branches of government. That means 75% of Americans don't know their First Amendment rights, and 62% don't know their governmental system. Even worse, 49% of Americans, half the population of the United States, believe that the president has the power to suspend the Constitution. Shouldn't that alarm
for contestant number 2. 10 minutes, 0 seconds. No penalty. The title of contestant number 3's oration, A More Perfect Union.
It was August of 1963. A young preacher from Atlanta had made his way to Washington, D.C. to make a speech of his life. He said, "I have a dream." These words shook the foundation of our nation. I too have a dream. I dream of liberty. I dream of freedom. Well, at least in my household. I dream of a time, this dream started when I got my driver's license. I realized that with freedom, though, came great demands, expectations, and a new set of responsibilities. Thoughts about college, dating, the new sports car my dad was going to buy for me. Maybe not so much the sports car. But in all seriousness, I dream an American dream. I dream of a time in America when our leaders, Democrats and Republicans, can sit together and conduct business while being more concerned about the welfare of the people they serve than they are about their party affiliation. I dream of a time in America when it is the goal of every single politician not only to address the needs of the fat cat or elites in Washington, but to discover and address the goals of the common people. I dream of a time in America when we as a people are more committed to building a more perfect union than we are to disrespecting the office of the president, because the man that holds that office is different. Have we forgotten or ignored the very first and most important words of the U.S. Constitution? We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. But what does that mean? A more perfect union? Well, it does not mean that we as Americans are perfect, because we're not. It does not mean that Americans should settle for the status quo, because we shouldn't. It does not mean that a select group of Americans should reap the benefits of this great country while the majority struggles to make ends meet. Because quite frankly, that's wrong. A more perfect union means we as a nation will continue to strive to improve life conditions for every single American. It means we will be committed to building a more perfect union. Why? Simply because of the phrase, we the people. We the people. We the people have been granted with the right to vote. And through the power of the vote, we can achieve the goal of creating a more perfect union. For real glory, yet disturbing challenge our nation faces is the epic struggle to close the gap between the ideas of our remarkable Constitution and the painful reality of American life. Sad to say, it's almost as if we've given up on building a more perfect union. In March of 2008, then Senator Barack Obama made a speech regarding the issues of race in America. And he said, and I quote, "The fact is, the comments that have been made by Jeremiah Wright and the issues that have surfaced over the last few weeks reflect the complexities of race in America that we've never really worked through. It's a small part of our union that we have yet to perfect. And if we simply walk away now and retreat back into our respective corners, we will never be able to solve larger issues like education or healthcare or the needs to find good jobs for every single American." When the Constitution was signed in 1787, only 10 to 16% of the population had a say in the vote, and that was only white male property owners. Today, because of the phrase government of the people, by the people, and for the people, all citizens, black, white, men, women, Latinos, Asians, and all citizens of the United States over the age of 18 have been granted with the right to vote. However, Americans lag far behind the rest of the world when it comes to exercising our right to vote. In 2009, there was a survey conducted called the Project Vote Report. The Project Vote Report showed the voter habits and voter trends of the 2008 presidential election. Sad to say, the results were scary. It showed how drastically civic engagement amongst our youngest voters lagged far behind the rest of the world when it came to exercising our right to vote. In other words, if young people would have voted at the same rate as those aged 30 and over, 7 million more votes would have been cast in the election. 7 million votes. We dishonor the achievements of pioneers. Pioneers like Abraham Lincoln, Susan B. Anthony, Frederick Douglass, Martin Luther King, and others when we failed to exercise our right to vote. The First Amendment was given us to express our rights, and express our thoughts and opinions. We have to use that First Amendment right as Americans. Leo Tolstoy once said, "Everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing themselves." Change starts with an individual who has insight, an individual who has vision, an individual who has courage, passion, and a cause. Frederick Douglass is an excellent example of one such man. He was a true American hero who stood up for what he believed in. In the face of adversity, he stood firm in his beliefs. Raised into slavery, Frederick Douglass, with the help of his master's wife and others, learned to read. This might seem like an ordinary story. However, there is a lot of significance in this because Frederick Douglass was a slave. And slaves weren't given the opportunity of an education. However, with the education he did receive, he read, and he read, and he read, and he read some more. And it was through reading that Frederick Douglass gained an ideological opposition to slavery. By the time of the Civil War, not only was he one of the most famous black men in the country, but he was just about the smartest. He used his status not only to influence blacks in the war, but also blacks throughout the United States of America. He conferred several times with Abraham Lincoln on the subject of blacks in the war, and Andrew Johnson on the subject of black suffrage. Frederick Douglass was instrumental in implementing change. When in 1865, he influenced President Abraham Lincoln to sign the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed all slaves in the South. Also under his influence, he influenced the passing of the 13th Amendment, which ensured that slavery would never again resurface in the United States of America. Susan B. Anthony is another example of a true American hero. Under her influence, she helped pass the 19th Amendment, which is the right for all women to have a say in our government. She was a longtime friend of Frederick Douglass and was the driving force of the women's suffrage movement. Not only did she fight for women's equality, though, she fought for the equality of all people. She expressed in a dream once saying, "If I could but live to see one more century and see all the fruition of work for women, there is so much work to be done. I know my dream can come true. With all the changes being made to the Constitution, I know there is still room to address inequality where it exists. Granted, it's not easy to change the Constitution, but it has been done 27 times. I challenge each and every one of you to believe in my dream of creating a more perfect union. We can do it one vote at a time. Thank you.
Time for contestant number 3, 9 minutes, 15 seconds, no penalty. The title of contestant number 4 oration is The Family of the Constitution.
Are there principles and beliefs that we would give our lives for? What about freedom and limited government? Are these principles worth dying for? Well, John Hancock, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin all thought they were. When they mutually pledged to each other their lives, fortune, and sacred honor, they believed in inalienable rights and that the power of the government is derived from the consent of the governed. These ideas were not the result of a conversation between our founding fathers. They did not hatch the ideas over a cup of acorn tea. No, in fact, Thomas Jefferson stressed the lack of originality of his concepts. In his letter to Thomas Lee on May 8, 1825, quote, "Not to find out new principles, which had never been said before, but to place before mankind the common sense of the subject, neither aiming at originality of principle or sentiments, it was intended to be an expression of the American mind." The roots of self-government and limited government are inherited from the long outstanding tradition of Western thought. Take John Locke, for example. He believed in a natural law that underlay all human interaction, that there is a right and a wrong, and that people, for the most part, know the difference. The rights of the people precede the state, both morally and historically. Locke believed that a government should pull its just authority from the consent of the governed. These ideas are fundamental to the emergence of our country. Hence, two principles may define the American mind and spirit. These two principles are freedom and limited government. These dearly held beliefs would be like parents to America. Parents that would have 3 children. The second of these 3 children is the United States Constitution. But this child cannot be fully understood without knowing his older sibling, the Declaration of Independence. So we must first take a quick glimpse at that great document. And the third child, I'm going to keep a mystery for now. I'm saving that one for later. And so the first of these children is the Declaration of Independence. And the time was ripe for greatness. Centuries of refinement to the ideas of humanity and the philosophical justification for a proper government, combined with England's unjust treatment of the colonists, culminating in the spark that was the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming the birth of a new nation founded upon self-evident truths. And so we have a revolution of ideas: freedom from tyranny, the right to pursue happiness, and for a people to govern themselves. People gave their lives to protect these natural rights. And they won. And then the question arises, what now? What now after we have gained our independence? Clearly, our newly found freedoms had to be protected, and the principles of self-governance had to be preserved through the generations. Sadly, history presents a repeated tragic story in which one tyrannical government is overthrown by the people only to be replaced with more tyranny. Our founding fathers could not let this happen to our young nation. And so these great parents of freedom and limited government had a second child. And that child is none other than the Constitution of the United States of America. It takes the heart of the Declaration and of the Revolution and codifies the principles into law. The American spirit had emerged during the war, but it's the Constitution that is the foundation of the American legal system, and it embodies the ideas of the natural laws that so many have given their lives for. It is the logical continuation of the Declaration. It takes those ideas of a natural order and true justice from the consent of the governed. Declaration is a spark. The Constitution is a torch. Okay, so I said that the Constitution upholds the natural rights and limits the government. But how does it do this? It reigns in a government and protects the people from the clutches of tyranny. But what is tyranny? The answer is simple. James Madison states in the 47th Federalist Paper that the accumulation of powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of a few or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elected, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. Whoa. Notice that Madison defines tyranny as just holding all the power, without even mentioning abusing it. Putting too much power into the hands of one group is definitely a formula for disaster. And so the principal way to avoid tyranny is for government to be at its very heart decentralized. The Constitution lays out the duties of the legislative, executive, and judicial branches distinct in their duties and checking each other. The second child, then, the Constitution, is a treasure map that provides the way to a great nation with a promising future. It offers the treasure of freedom. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom from tyranny. And so it appears we have the perfect family. These great parents of freedom, which embraces the inalienable rights, and limited government, that insists that a government derive its authority from the consent of the governed, and that it be kept small by the decentralization of the power. From these lofty parents, we have the Declaration of Independence proclaiming the birthday of a new and great nation. And the Constitution preserves the Declaration by providing the legal foundation upon which our nation is built. And so, there we have it. The perfect family, right? Wrong! This Constitution is worthless. Now the third child. The third child, the mystery child, must be the favorite child. And who is it? It is I, and it is you, and it is every American citizen. We may not be the author of this great document, but we must be its keepers. We do not preserve it in our hearts and minds. If we do not insist that our political leaders do the same, then the Constitution is just an old bit of parchment. We could bury it in a museum somewhere. Yes, the Constitution is old, but who would want to throw away a treasure map just because it's old? Nobody. Not if it leads to treasure. Often in life, there presents an easy way and a right way. It reminds me of a Charlie Brown comic strip in which Linus is at camp reading a letter from his sister Lucy. Dear Linus, it reads, how are you? I made you some cookies, but they looked so good that I ate them all. And then I thought I'd bake you a cake. But then I thought, why bother? Anyways, hope you're doing well. Your sister, Lucy. Ah, why bother? Like Lucy, our intentions can be good, but we take the easy way out. When it comes to preserving the Constitution, however, good intentions are not enough. Thomas Jefferson said, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. If we wish to be free, if we wish to enjoy the fruits the Constitution has to offer, we must be vigilant. We must thank our founding fathers who remembered us in the preamble to the Constitution when they wrote to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Let us, like them, think not just of ourselves. Let us hold the torch of the Constitution for the generations to come, as together we preserve the greatness of our nation. Thank you.
Time for contestant number 4. 9 minutes, 20 seconds, no penalty. The title of contestant number 5's oration, Our Duties.
What are your duties as an American citizen? Of course, there are the obvious responsibilities, such as voting and serving on a jury. While they are important, they are not immediately relevant to all citizens. Many, such as myself, do not qualify to vote or serve on a jury due to our age. And while some duties become relevant with age, others are bestowed at birth. So what are the responsibilities of citizens too young to fulfill other obligations? Well, the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States of America says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. This amendment to the Constitution protects several crucial rights given to all American citizens regardless of age. These rights given to us have certain limitations, but they have led me to one conclusion about the resultant duties. These duties Americans have not only to their government and their fellow citizens, but to every human being, foreign or familiar. The duties resulting from these protected rights include the following. First, to fully utilize freedom of expression for good purposes and not evil. Second, to seek and find the will of goodness through freedom of belief and to fully live it to the best of one's capabilities. Finally, we must be aware of the political actions currently occurring that violate the will of goodness and seek to arrest them. The first duty you have resulting from the First Amendment is to fully utilize freedom of expression for good purposes and not evil. The pistol. It has no ethical development, and words like guns do not possess a conscience, but they are weapons. And in order to fully utilize this weapon, we must understand the power that words have and learn to respect them because of the potential damage they can cause. Words have the power to bring forth life or death, and when good men are equipped with powerful words of truth, it can change society. Take, for example, Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't wield a heavy sword. He didn't use an AK-47. The weapon he chose to fight his battle was not one of violence, but it certainly was one of power. He maintained the position as the official spokesperson for the boycott against the legal segregation of black people. And on August 28, 1963, he gave one of the most famous speeches ever given to the American public. It is commonly known as his I Have a Dream speech. Through this and many other peaceful protests, King helped bring about the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It criminalizes any form of discrimination based on a person's gender, race, color, religion, or national origin. As you can see, words have the power to alter the way society functions, and we need persons such as King, who are willing to speak against the status quo in order to achieve justice. Our first president, George Washington, understood the importance of freedom of speech. In 1783, in an address to an assembly of Army officers in Newburgh, New York, he stated, "If freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led, like sheep to the slaughter." We must use our freedom of speech in order to change societal standings with which we disagree and to fight for our convictions. Another duty you have, resulting from the First Amendment, is to seek the will of goodness and to fully live it to the best of your capabilities. In order to live out the will of goodness, one must determine what it actually is. No human being is perfect. We are all sinful by nature. Our founding fathers made this belief clear in the way they set up checks and balances, which ensure no one person has too much power. Billy Graham once described the inner struggles between good and evil in his book, The Holy Spirit, Activating God's Power in Your with an analogy that went something like this. An Eskimo fisherman came to town every Saturday afternoon. He always brought his 2 dogs with him. One was black, the other was white. He had taught them to fight on command. Every Saturday afternoon in the town square, the people would gather, and these 2 dogs would fight, and the fisherman would take bets. On one Saturday, the black dog would win. Another Saturday, the white dog would win. But the fisherman always won. His friends began to ask him how he did it, and he said, "I starve one and feed the other. The one I feed always wins because he is stronger." Billy Graham compares this story with the current inner struggles of a human between good and evil. The desires you fuel are always going to be more powerful than those which you deny. In 1831, a Frenchman by the name of Alexis de Tocqueville came to America to study our people and to search for principles from which his country could benefit. He then wrote a book called Democracy in America, which discusses several different aspects of our country. In the introductory chapter of this book, he explains that in order for freedom to exist, there must be morality. And in order for morality to exist, there must be faith. Thanks to the First Amendment, we can freely and openly live out our faith. Our duty is simply to earnestly seek the will of divine goodness and to fully live it to the best of our capabilities. Finally, we must be aware of the political actions currently occurring that violate the will of goodness and seek to arrest them. President James Madison stated in a speech during the Virginia Convention in 1788 that since the civilization of mankind, I believe there are more instances of abridgment of freedom of the people by silent encroachments of those in power than by violent and sudden usurpations. But in order to speak out against these abridgments of freedom, we must be aware of the actions taking place in office. Keep up with what is occurring in positions held by government officials and remain informed through research of your own, knowing that the newscaster isn't always telling you a completely truthful and unbiased story. President Harry S. Truman stated in a speech to Congress in 1950 that once a government is committed to silencing the voice of opposition, it has only one way to go, and that is down the path of increasingly repressive measures until it becomes a source of terror to all its citizens and creates a country where everyone lives in fear. But in order to prevent this kind of tyrannical government from occurring in America, a voice of opposition must exist. Once we stop utilizing this right and fulfilling this duty, the pathway is paved and polished for those in authority to get a hold of more power over our lives than what was intended by the Constitution. Even though this duty may seem a daunting one, we owe it to our children and grandchildren to preserve democracy by making our voice heard, and by staying informed in order to take action against deeds that would endanger not only our own rights, but also those of our fellow citizens. In conclusion, there are many rights and duties resulting from the First Amendment that apply to all citizens, 9 to 92. The first being to fully utilize freedom of expression for good purposes and not evil. The second being to seek and find the will of goodness through freedom of belief and to fully live it to the best of our capabilities. Finally, we must be politically active by making our voice heard. You may be wondering, how are these duties of Americans important to non-citizens? Here's why. We are a beacon of freedom and democracy for an increasingly oppressed world. But once that beacon is extinguished, the poor, the tired, the downtrodden have no ray of hope to which they can cling. Don't take for granted the freedoms given to you in the Constitution, and don't neglect the duties that come along with them. While some may abuse these rights for selfish gain, I encourage you to use them to help create a more perfect union. Finally, I want to urge you to enjoy your freedoms. Sometimes I think we look at the Constitution and immediately think of all the duties we ought to be fulfilling and how painfully short we're falling, but I don't believe the author's intention was to berate us. These freedoms were outlined in order to protect our people and ensure that they can live life with basic God-given rights no matter what their age may be.
Time for contestant number 5. 9 minutes, 40 seconds, no penalty. This time, I'd like to ask our NEC, Ms. Boland, to come and draw for the assigned topic. The title of contestant number 6 oration is Time to Give Back.
The U.S. Constitution was first signed on September 17, 1787, by a group of people known as the Framers. This group consisted of 55 people, but only 39 of them actually signed the Constitution. It was constructed to make a better government because the one under the Articles of Confederation kind of fell through. It was short, sweet, and to the point, running about 10 pages long, containing 7 articles. Today's Constitution has those same 7 articles with an addition of 27 amendments. The articles contain basic information on your 3 branches of government, general provisions, states' relations, the amendment process, and ratifications to the Constitution. The 3 branches of government are the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. The legislative branch is Congress. This is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. These people make our bills. The bills then go to the executive branch. This branch is made up of the President of the United States, who's also known as the Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces. The President has the right to either veto or sign the bill into law. If it is vetoed, it then goes back down to Congress, where they have to receive a 2/3 majority. When this occurs, the President then must sign that bill into law. If there's ever a question of the constitutionality of that bill or law, it is then sent to the Supreme Court. This court is what makes up the judicial branch. These 9 justices have the right to interpret the bill or law and deem it constitutional. If it is ever found unconstitutional, then it is shut down completely. Then there are the 27 amendments. The first 10 were brought about when James Madison, who is also known as the father of our Constitution, brought 12 amendments to the first Congress in 1789. Out of the 12, 10 were passed into a bill we know now as the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights state each individual's rights as a U.S. citizen, whether it be the right to a trial by jury, the right to free speech, or everybody's favorite, the right to remain silent. Then there are the other 17 amendments. These were either brought about because of a major historical event, like the Civil War, which brought about Amendments 13, 14, and 15, or it was simply placed to repeal another amendment, like Amendment 21 was placed to repeal Amendment 18, the ban on liquor. As U.S. citizens, we have rights and responsibilities that we must uphold, whether it be paying our taxes, attending jury duty, obeying our laws, or voting. Taxes are collected at the local, state, and federal levels, and within those are many different types of taxes. Income tax is collected by the federal and some state governments. These governments take a certain percentage of the income that you made during a certain year. non-essential items like books, clothing, and other necessities. Oddly enough, there is no tax on food, but don't let this fool you. If you go to McDonald's or Burger King or any restaurant like that, you have to pay taxes here because the government sees these as processed goods rather than actual food. Now, if you go to Walmart, Winn-Dixie, or even Publix, you don't have to pay taxes here. But make sure you watch out for things like pretzels and chips because these are considered snacks. There's also an excise tax on gasoline, alcohol, and tobacco products. The government put an extra tax on these items because they saw it as unnecessary for a human to have on a daily basis. So they slipped a little bit extra money on those. Not everyone likes to pay their taxes, but the money from taxes go to government services that we usually take for granted, like public schools and libraries, prisons, the law enforcement, fire department, and also our national and state parks. The right to have a trial by jury is stated in the Sixth Amendment and preserved in the Senate. But how can we have a trial without the jury? Jury members are randomly selected throughout all registered voters. You also have to reside in the county of which the trial is being taken place. Failure to show up to jury duty without a legitimate excuse, like a hospital emergency or excessive work, can lead you to being held in contempt of the courts. Once selected, make sure you plan out your whole day, because that's how long you're expected to stay. Once you arrive, you will then receive a number. When that number is called upon, you will then be asked questions from the two attorneys, the prosecuting and defense attorneys. If you're not selected for the final jury, that's okay. It still counts as your jury duty for the year. However, if you are selected for the final jury, you're expected to make an honest verdict based solely on the evidence, testimonies, and laws that were brought about during the trial. There should not be any emotion involved when making that verdict. There are many different laws out there, and each state has its own set of laws. In Florida, it's legal to make a right-hand turn at a red light, but in other states, it's illegal to do so. But make sure you watch out in Florida and those other legal states for lights or signs that permit you to make that right-hand turn. Then there are drinking and driving laws, which are brought about by the Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or MADD. This law states that you cannot consume any alcohol, then drive a motorized vehicle, even if it's a golf cart or even a boat. This is to keep the roads and the waters not only safe for you, but also for those around you as well. There are also seatbelt laws, or in Florida known as click it or tickets. This law states that everyone in the car must wear a seatbelt unless you're 18 years or older and riding in the back seat. Laws are placed to keep order in society. Without laws, we would still have our rights, but there won't be anyone to stop others from infringing on or taking away our rights. Even if you're not a U.S. citizen, you can still be convicted for breaking the law. Voting is also done at the local, state, and federal levels. But unlike taxes and jury duty, it's not mandatory to vote. You do, however, have to be 18 years or older, reside in the city, state, and county of which you're registering to vote, and also be a U.S. citizen. If you are ever convicted of a felony, your right to vote is revoked. However, in some states, they allow you to carry out your sentence, then give you your voting privileges back to you. There are no laws that state you have to vote, but it is highly recommended, because this is the chance to put someone into office who you think best represents you. You can vote for your president, your senators, your House of Representatives, and even your local city council. As Thomas Jefferson once stated, quote, "The government you elect is government you deserve," unquote. There are also many different ways to be involved in the political process. The first being political participation. This is the signing of or getting others to sign petitions. And also you can attend political rallies. There's also civic engagement, which is hands-on activities like volunteering for a cause or working on a committee or a subcommittee for a public problem. The U.S. Constitution has been around for over 200 100 years. The least we can do as U.S. citizens is pay our taxes correctly and on time, attend jury duty when we can, obey all the laws that were set for us, and vote, if applicable. Thank you.
Time for contestant number 6, 8 minutes, 28 seconds, no penalty. I will now read the assigned topic discourse. Amendment number 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Amendment number 1. They will all have 5 minutes to study, and all contestants will speak on the same assigned topic. For the past 5 minutes, contestant number 1 has been in a private room preparing for the assigned topic presentation. If everyone is ready, I will call for contestant number 1. Contestant number 1, your assigned topic.
Let me speak. Let me be heard. Allow me to pray, and allow me to serve, for I am an American, and not my government nor you can silence my words. But what if government could? What if Congress passes a bill that enforces us all to convert to Christianity, Buddhism, or Islam? I would not be able to pray to my deity. I would not be able to follow my rosary. I would not be able to rejoice in the hymns of my Lord. This is not what America stands for. A bill such as this could not withstand itself to the enforcement and utmost power of our Constitution. However, a bill such as this has presented itself in front of our democracy. The latest controversial debates have existed on allowing prayer in classrooms, displaying the 10 Commandments or the Lord's Prayer in public schools, and many want to teach creationism instead of the theory of evolution. Whether you agree or disagree with religious education in public schools, one voice is louder and stands stronger than the popular culture. It is the living and breathing Constitution that must continue to be honored. In March of 1789, most of our founding fathers were proud of the document they had created. They lifted their heads high in satisfaction of its holdings. But of the 55 delegates to the convention, only 39 actually signed the Constitution. Edmund Randolph and George Mason of Virginia and Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts refused to sign the Constitution, due in part to a lack of a Bill of Rights. These men understood that if our rights were not protected, then the people might as well have no rights at all. At this time, James Madison, who eventually became the 4th President of the United States, opposed a Bill of Rights. He addressed the Bill of Rights as parchment barriers, which only offered an illusion to protection against tyranny. James Wilson, a founding father and a past Supreme Court justice, argued that to enumerate the rights of the people would have been dangerous, because it would have implied that the rights not specifically mentioned in the original Constitution did not exist. As we fast forward into 2014, A well-known American attorney, Francis Lee Bailey, once wrote that he could not seriously believe that the Bill of Rights or this First Amendment could get through Congress today. In fact, it couldn't even make it out of committee. Today, almost 227 years since the Constitution's original ratification, I cannot begin to fathom our nation without the securities provided by the Bill of Rights. Our founding fathers persevered in writing the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, that in its First Amendment reads that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech. Debates, arguments, and challenges will continue to present themselves in front of our invaluable Constitution and this First Amendment. But it is the strength, respect, and faith that we Americans invoke into our Constitution that keeps it alive and strong. In this nation, may God bless America is not a question. To declare, may God bless America is a right protected for you and protected for me. So let me speak. Let me be heard. Allow me to pray and allow me to serve, for I am an American. For we are Americans, and our government cannot take that away. Thank you.
Now for contestant number 1, 4 minutes, 33 seconds, no penalty. Contestant number 2, your assigned topic.
Operation Fast and Furious, a federal government fiasco that allowed some thousands of guns to find their way to Mexican drug cartels, only to lose track of the majority of them and later learn that innocent people had been murdered by those very guns. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives agent John Dodson has recently written a book revealing an inside account of this operation. He submitted the manuscript to his department according to federal guidelines for review, but was denied permission to even write the book. Why? Because it would have a negative impact on morale. That's not in the interest of the country. That goes against national security. In attempting to uphold national security, our government has censored the freedom of the press. The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Everyone tends to talk about freedom of religion and freedom of speech in relation to this amendment. And while both of those rights are certainly important, the other liberties guaranteed in this amendment are often forgotten, yet they are equally significant, especially freedom of the press. 2012, officials covered those up due to national security. In essence, the national security label has become censorship of the press in disguise, a way to keep individuals from printing information any government agency deems unflattering to itself. The NSA, the Pentagon Papers, these are examples of the suppression of our First Amendment rights, yet we blindly allow them. So many actions done in the name of national security infringe on our rights. Our right to know, our right to stay informed, our right to hold government accountable for its actions and keep it within its constitutional limits. If we cannot print what we wish, if the freedom of the press is taken away from us, and if we cannot expose corruption and malpractice in government, how can we keep it accountable? A free press is the backbone of a free nation. It is our primary means of holding the government accountable to us, the people. Governor Edmund Randolph, arguing for the principles of the Constitution, posed a crucial question to the Virginia Ratification Convention in 1788 when he asked, if the government is to be binding on the people, are not the people the proper persons to examine its merits or defects? Indeed, freedom of the press provides that check on government. National security is important, but recent actions have gone too far. If we protect security at the cost of our personal liberty, we will begin to emulate George Orwell's 1984 society, with Big Brother controlling everything, leaving citizens powerless to stop it. For, as Thomas Jefferson once wrote, no government ought to be without censors, and where the press is free, no one ever will. The First Amendment reminds us Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. Our founders made us this promise, and now we must seek to keep that promise.
Time for contestant number 2, 4 minutes, 54 seconds, no penalty. Contestant number 3, your assigned topic.
I think America is the greatest country on the planet. Why can I say that? The First Amendment. May that be true or not, I can still say it because of the First Amendment. The First Amendment prohibits Congress from making any law that prohibits us as Americans from the right of free speech, freedom of the press, freedom to petition the government, freedom of religion. That's it. I think blue shirts are better than red shirts. It may be absurd, but it's free speech. I can say that. Well, why not be a Methodist country? Why not be a Catholic country? Why not be a Baptist country? Why not have all of that? Freedom of religion. Did you hear about the scandal with Bill Clinton? Did you hear about what happened in Washington? Freedom of the press. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Congressman, I don't like what we're doing. We need to change it. Freedom of petition. When the First Amendment was amended, it was priority. Usually when Europeans come to America, or the British came to the Americas, they came for either 2 reasons, for gold or for religious fulfillment. Luckily, we came for religious fulfillment. It was priority because Americans or colonists didn't believe in And they didn't have the same ideals as the English church, so they made it priority that we had religious freedom. They made it priority that we could say what we wanted to say and however we wanted to say it. Now, with religious freedom, we have the ability to go to church without being persecuted. We're allowed to believe in whatever God we want to. With freedom of the press, we're allowed to know what's going on in our government. We're allowed to know and monitor the things that go on in Washington. With freedom of petition, we're allowed to go to our congressmen, to our mayors, to our city council members, and we're allowed to say, this might not be working. Let's change it. Kind of like what happened with the 21st Amendment. The 18th Amendment wasn't working. Prohibition hadn't been successful. So what we did was we took it to Congress and we said, this isn't working. Let's change it. Freedom of assembly. Without that, we wouldn't be here today. We'd probably have to do this in private. We'd probably have to do this in secret. Freedom of nevertheless, our veterans and our soldiers make this country the home of the brave and the land of the free. Our First Amendment gives us the opportunity to say how we want to say, what we want to say. This is the significance of the First Amendment. Thank you.
Time for contestant number 3. 3 minutes, 20 seconds, no penalty. Contestant number 4, your assigned topic.
Colonel Henry Lee, the father of Robert E. Lee, honored George Washington upon his death with these memorable words: first in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. Like our first president, the First Amendment holds a very special place in the hearts of the colonists back then, and it continues to do so for us today. The First Amendment was ratified on December 15, 1791. That's the first of 10 amendments that comprises the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was originally intended for the Federalists to reconcile the Anti-Federalists into supporting the Constitution. The Anti-Federalists believed that their rights needed to be specifically listed in order to be best protected. The Federalists disagreed. James Madison, the Federalist, said that if you actually listed the rights, that would jeopardize the rights not specifically listed. On a personal note, although I have a deep respect for James Madison, I believe that time has shown the wisdom in the Anti-Federalists in listing these rights. Okay, so let's take a look at these rights specifically enumerated in the First Amendment. And that is freedom of religion, speech, press, the right to assemble, and the right to petition. I believe these are very important to understand so that we can use these, and I believe we have a duty to understand these, so we can use these to protect not just our own rights, but the rights of our fellow Americans. Freedom of religion. Freedom of religion is twofold. There's a freedom from and a freedom to. There's a freedom from the government forcing a national established religion upon us. This was originally just applied nationally, but it was extended to the states via the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. There's also a freedom to. We have the freedom to worship according to the dictates of our own conscience. Freedom of speech. What a blessing it is to be an American and have this freedom. That I may stand up before my peers, my school, and even you here today. That I may speak freely about my government. This is a priceless treasure. I believe this freedom is so important because it allows us to stand up not just for our own rights, but for the rights of our fellow Americans. Like Harriet Beecher Stowe speaking up, providing a voice to the slaves who were in Uncle Tom's Cabin. And Susan B. Anthony standing up for the rights of women. And Martin Luther King Jr. standing up for the civil rights of African Americans. freedom of the press. I, like my fellow Americans, do not want the government to control the dissemination of information. History shows that one of the first things to go in a despotic government is this freedom. Mao Zedong, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, they all use this to create a cult of personality and force a phony image of themselves upon society. The right to assemble. This is a very important right that allows us to meet together and discuss our rights and perceived grievances. The right to petition. The right to petition, I noticed that this enumerated right provides a nice model for students. I've noticed at my school that when students do not like a policy, this is a commonly used way to express this grievance that they feel. And, you know, at my school, when they do this, it doesn't always work. They'll write a petition and, you know, the principal might just say no. So it doesn't always work, but it's important for them to have a way to express this, a way to show we believe this and to present it. Now, again, these rights, these freedoms are so important, and we have to know them. We have this duty, a duty to understand them, because how else can we protect not only our own rights, but how else, like Harriet Beecher Stowe, how else, like Martin Luther King Jr., can we stand up, can we look out for each other, can we have each other's backs, and really protect these freedoms and these rights that we have so listed in the Constitution and the Declaration. Thank you.
Time for contestant number 4. 4 minutes, 2 seconds, no penalty. Contestant number 5, your assigned topic.
Perjury, plagiarism, incitement to imminent lawless action, true threats, solicitations to commit crimes, blackmail, and child pornography. No, this is not some kind of criminal to-do list. In fact, these are types of speech which remain unprotected by the First Amendment. The First Amendment states, Congress shall make no law restricting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. One court case involving this amendment would be that of the New York Times versus the United States. Let's set the scene. The year is 1971, and the country is very divided on the issue of the Vietnam War. To make matters worse, official documents have been illegally copied and leaked to the press. Both the New York Times and the Washington Post were able to get a hold of these documents officially known as the History of U.S. Decision-Making Process on Vietnam Policy. These papers are informally nicknamed the Pentagon Papers. But upon government request, the New York District Court orders that these papers shall not be published. Why? The Nixon administration believes these papers have the power to endanger national security. But these journalists don't go down without a fight. The court order is appealed under the logic that this preventing of publication, otherwise known as prior restraint, violates the First Amendment. This case raises many questions concerning our rights in the Constitution. Are they absolute in all circumstances? Does the government's role to maintain national security override our right to a free press? Because personally, I enjoy speaking freely, but I also like to go to bed at night peacefully. So one might ask, what is the balance here? Those in favor of the New York Times might say that the press has the right and responsibility to inform the American people, and that through a free press, the government's power is held in check. On the other hand, those in favor of the government's position might might say that while freedom of speech is important, it isn't absolute in all circumstances. So what is the balance here? According to 2 of the 6 justices who ruled in favor of the New York Times, giving them a 6-3 majority, the First Amendment is concrete. This has simply reinforced courts everywhere to keep the First Amendment as absolute as possible. And while the court did rule in favor of the New York Times, there are many who still disagree with this final decision. One example would be Chief Justice Warren Burger, who explains that freedom of speech as absolute in all circumstances is a view he respects, but one he simply cannot take on as his own due to the complexity and importance of the government's role to maintain national security. So, the real question brought up by this case would be this. Should imminent endangerment to national security be added to our list of types of speech unprotected by the First Amendment?
Time for contestant number 5. 3 minutes, 41 seconds, no penalty. Contestant number 6, your assigned topic.
In 1789, James Madison brought 12 amendments to the First Congress. Out of the 12, 10 were passed into a bill we know now as the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights state each individual's rights as a U.S. citizen. The First Amendment provides the right to practice our own religion, to assemble, to petition, to press, and to speech. The founders believed that the freedom of expression was the most important under the protected rights. The right to practice your own religion provides the freedom of religious practice and the freedom from being forced to believe in any one religion. There are 2 main clauses that make up the right to practice your own religion, or none at all. The first being the Free Exercise Clause. Here, individuals may practice their own religion without fear of government coercion to conform to any one religion or type of religion. There were times, however, where Jews and Catholics were prohibited from holding office at the state level. Also, in 1961, Maryland didn't allow for nonconformers or believers to hold any type of office. Then there was the Free Establishment Clause. This was placed to keep the church and the state separate from each other. One main issue regarding the right to practice your own religion is prayer times in schools. In 1962 and 63, the Supreme Court ruled that there were restrictions. One being the organized prayer times led by school officials. This was put about because the nonconformers and believers would feel pressure from the other teachers and the students. Also, teachers can teach about religion, but they cannot promote it through prayer times. The right to assemble provides the right for us to come together in a public or private gathering. We can join groups for religious, social, recreational reasons. By doing this, American citizens can easily promote their ideas to others. The right to press provides the freedom of prior restraints or censorship. Press can only be held responsible for what they print after the fact. In a ruling by the Burger Court, they found that reporters cannot guarantee the anonymity of their sources without fear of being held in contempt or jailed. They also found that judges can impose gag orders on the press regarding the evidence of a crime while the trial is at hand. The right to petition the government provides the right for us to ask for changes or adjustments in government. We can do this by signing petitions and sending them to our elected representatives. We can also call, email, and write to them as well. The final right under this amendment is the freedom of speech. This stops the government from making any laws that can stop me or you from saying what we feel or think. A type of speech is speech plus conduct. This is the use of symbols rather than words to convey ideas. For example, the wearing of black armbands to protest the Vietnam War, the wearing of the flag on the seat of your pants, and also the burning of the flag itself. The First Amendment provides us with our 5 basic rights: the right to petition the government, the right to assemble, the right to press, the right to speech, and the right to practice our own religion. Thank you.
Time for contestant number 6. 3 minutes, 54 seconds, no penalty. This concludes the competition portion of the program. Will the judges and tabulators please accompany me to the tabulation room upstairs for the determination of a winner? You are free to go back to the back of the hall and partake in some refreshments. And we'll probably be back about 30 minutes. At this time, I'd like to publicly thank those individuals who assisted with this contest, all the judges, timers, tabulators, escorts. Got some awards to give out, but this time would Commander Art Schwabe and Jay Conde please join me at the podium. I'd like to present a certificate of appreciation to the chaplain, Steve Newman. Certificates of appreciation to the timekeeper, Fletcher Williams.
Great job. Well, thank you very much. Okay.
Joe McNeil. Certificates of appreciations to the tabulators, Andrew Nagy. Randy Eck. And Mary West. I'd like to thank Post 138 Honor Guard, Brenda Walsh, Bob Walsh, Bruce Milne, Roseanne Milne, Shelley Remote, and Jose Remote. At this time, I'd like to introduce our distinguished panel of judges. first judge is Evie Panko. Evie has judged the American Legion Oratorical for many years at all levels and has been doing the state contest for several years. She has held various offices in the Toastmasters organization since 1985 and has earned the distinguished designation of Distinguished Toastmaster. Since then, she has been a lecturer on cruise ships in the Mediterranean, Panama Canal, as well as in the Caribbean. Currently, she is a public speaker for the Duval County Extension Office, teaching Florida-friendly practices to homeowner associations. She also interviews master gardener candidates and teaches speaker training to the master gardeners in Duval County. Next we have Gretchen Beaudry Titshaw. Gretchen is an FSU graduate, a BS in UNF-MS, retired principal, private, public, and charter school, 18 years, educator for 30 years. She is married to the Adjutant General of the state of Florida, Major General Emmett Buddy Titshaw. She is dedicated to sponsor and children in the military. And when she has spare time, she spends it with her grandson. Thank you very much, Gretchen. Next, we have Michael Rutherford. Mike is a former American Legion Oratorical Contest champion for 2 years in 1989 and 91. He was also a boy state back in 1909. He's a native of Jacksonville. Michael graduated from Georgetown University and later got a master's in international economics and management from SDA Bocconi in Milan, Italy. He remained in Europe for 10 years, working for Johnson & Johnson and later Adidas. Michael then joined CSX in 2008, a Class 1 railroad, as the Director of Strategic Planning for the Intermodal Business Unit, and continued to cover roles of increasing responsibility before being promoted to his current position as the Assistant Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Industrial Products. Michael and his wife, Francesca, whom he met and married in Rome, have 2 children, a 7-year-old girl, and looks like Shirley Temple, and a not-so-little boy that joined the Rutherford clan exactly 1 year ago today. Next, we have Dr. Kathy Devine. Kathy is a Florida native and lifelong educator who began her career teaching elementary grades, later taught middle and high school mathematics, and went on to teach adults in educational research and leadership programs. She focused her work in assessment and evaluation of programs and retired from her last position with school districts in 2013. She continues her evaluation work now through consulting and teaching part-time. Formal education includes BS in elementary education, Florida State University, master's degree in secondary mathematics education from the University of North Florida, and psychological from Eastern New Mexico University and Portales, New Mexico, and a PhD in educational research and evaluation from Virginia Tech. And now we have Mark Spain. Mark is a co-anchor of Action News at 5, 5:30, 6, 10, and 10:30, and 11 each weeknight in Jacksonville area. Mark is an award-winning journalist in addition to earning 3 coded Emmys for his reports on the homeless and a wife and mother with Alzheimer's. He also garnered awards from the Associated Press, the Press Club of Cleveland, American Heart Association, and Northeast Florida Agency on Aging. Mark holds a BA in Communications degree from Cleveland State University. In college, he earned 100% of his college expenses and made the dean's list. Throughout his career, Mark has participated in continuing education classes in television news and been a presenter at workshops and seminars. At this time, I'd like to have the contestants come up here on the stage. Round of applause. Appearing as contestant number 1 is Elizabeth Barahona of Orlando, who is a senior at Boone High School. Appearing as contestant number 2 is Shannon Wade of Tampa, who is a junior at Wade Academy High School. Appearing as contestant number 3 is Timothy Lee of Melbourne, who is a senior at Melbourne High School. Appearing as contestant number 4 is Daniel Mangum of Tallahassee, who is a senior at John Paul II, or John Paul Junior High School. Appearing as contestant number 5 is Madison Moore of Fernandina Beach, who is a freshman at Yulee High School. Appearing as contestant number 6 is Rachel Gatos of Avon Park, who is a junior at Avon Park High School. Now the moment we've all been waiting for, the announcement of our winners. I will announce the winners of the $500 scholarships first, then the winner of the $1,000 scholarship, the $1,500 scholarship, and finally our department winner and $2,500 scholarship recipient. If for any reason the winner cannot compete in the national contest, the runner-up will become the Florida winner. The 3 $500 winners are contestant number 6, Rachel Gatos. Contestant number 5, Madison Moore. Contestant number 3, Timothy Lee. The third place and $1,000 scholarship winner is contestant number 4, Daniel Mangum. The second place winner and a $1,500 scholarship is contestant number 2, Shannon Wade. The first place winner and $2,500 scholarship advancing to the national finals, contestants to be held in Indianapolis April 4th, 5th, and 6th is contestant number 1, Elizabeth. Is Carol Polk here? She just said, well, anyway, I just wanted to recognize Carol. She does a heck of a job, and if it wasn't for her, this program would not go off as smooth as it does. She makes my job so easy. This time I'd like to have the chaplain with the closing prayer. Stand, uncover.
Let us pray. Almighty Father, we thank you for this very successful oratorical competition. Bless everyone here in attendance. Bless our families, community, and candidates for their hard work and devotion for this wonderful event. And may the strength of God sustain us. May the power of God preserve us. May the hands of God direct us. May the loving grace of Almighty God be with us this day and forever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for coming. Have a safe trip home, and we will see you later. Thank you.
Yes.